If you love movies, you're in the right place, and that place is here at the Chronicle, the Phoenician Film Podcast for the people's movies. Welcome back, and welcome to episode 45 of the podcast. My name is Paul. I am your host. I'm also the main editor of the people's movies. Usually I'm joined by Clotilde Chinichi. She is here, but she isn't here. Let me explain. So obviously, I'm recording this the day after. The day before, we tried to record this episode, and it seems to be one of the reviews that the actual audio didn't actually work. So, what I'm going to do is I'm doing the intro. I'm also going to do the first review, and then you'll hear Clotilde in the second review. And so, the films that we're going to review for episode 45 of the Chronicle are Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning and Wes Anderson's Phoenician Scheme. For the first review of this episode of the Chronicle, episode 45, we are reviewing Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Can we trust him for one last time? That is the question that Tom Cruise wants to ask you, the viewer. Can we trust Ethan Hunt in the eighth and possibly final Mission Impossible film franchise? Hard to believe it's actually 30 years since we first met the young, naive Ethan Hunt, who embarked in his first mission away back in the 1996 Mission Impossible film, which was then directed by Brian De Palma. 2025, we are now on the final missions upon him. So this one is set 2 years after part one, which is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. The Final Reckoning is like a continuation of that story to try and find this entity. But what is the entity? Part one, we saw Ethan and the IMF team constantly speculating what it could be and who it was or what it can be. And Ethan, so in this one, Ethan gets his self-destruction message, which comes from Angela Bassett, Erica Sloan, who was one time the CIA boss. Now she's the president of the country. And she sends him a personal message for Hunt to become the saviour of humanity, but also to give himself in as well to to his president. What I liked about this scene also was it went back to analog, so it was like either I think it was a VHS player, possibly a Betamax if you want to sort of be very nostalgic there. In this one, the entity, we start to see the entities unleashing chaos in the world, and the world is actually changing. And the truth is vanishing, and war is coming. And as the entity starts to take control and destroy what is left of humanity as well. So the question is, can Ethan find it and stop it? And the first task he is to find Esai Morales, who plays Gabriel, who played Gabriel in the first part, to actually find him and actually find where this thing actually is. The Mission Impossible franchise is one of those franchises which has grown not just in popularity but also critically. The more and more films that we get, the stunts have get bigger, they've even get even crazier as well. And there was actually one point in the franchise, it was like a competition with the Fast and Furious toe to toe, see who can come up with the most outrageous stunts. Tom Cruise, he's like one of the last original big Hollywood megastars. The sort of stars who could put their names are pulling power to get bums on seats in cinemas, regardless of what genre of film it is just made. And it's not just obviously about the people through the doors being this megastar. It's about he gets involved in everything, not just in the acting side. He's also involved in production, the direction, and at the same time, Cruise is staging some breathtaking stunts, some of the craziest stunts you'll ever see. And the thing is, he's a grand age of 62 here. He is still a student of film, and he has been a student of the film in the industry since he was 18. And he's always wanted to learn, even at the age he is now, and he's always embracing new technology, which is making him the complete package. And I'm not saying that every film that he's starred in has been perfect, but we now live in an era where I think a lot of the young actors seem to be more interested in their social media status than actually trying to establish themselves and maybe become one of the future megastars. So regardless if you support the sort of comments that some of these young actors have made in social media, we all know that these demons will come back to haunt you and destroy your career. Your reputation can just go at the blink of the eye. There is one film that I will mention, Snow White. The actress in there, the comments she's made, regardless if you do actually agree with what she said, maybe social media was not the best place to actually share her actual views on for what she shared the view on. I'll be honest, I can't think any of the younger actors who are remotely close to actually being like the megastar. I could easily tell you many have destroyed their careers. That's just the way the world is at the moment. And anyone who's, excuse me, is close to Cruise in stature, or middle age or older, are the ones that you could probably say are close to matching them in that megastar stardom. So post COVID, cinemas and film theatres around the world, no, they were struggling, and sadly many closed. And then during the pandemic, there was many films that were saying we're going to be like the saviours of cinema. At one point, Dead Reckoning Part 7 could have been one of the movies, but that get delayed, and obviously delaying Part 8, The Final Reckoning. Cruise ended up being that saviour of cinema because I think it was Top Gun Maverick. Regardless if you liked the movie or not, was a sort of film that sort of kept cinema alive. And we do now live in that sort of an environment which the time between the cinema release and the digital release or the home release is getting smaller and smaller. In some cases, the films are coming directly onto digital or the streaming services or the home entertainment. Getting packed cinema screens is a bit of a rarity these days. Now, Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning, I have to admit, it is a Ford film. I think personally shouldn't have been a second film. Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning should have been one film, and for that, what they should have done was cut it all down, take the dead wood for both films, and made it a more solid, dynamic package. It could still be in the 3 hour film. So for Final Reckoning, I mean, the beginning, it was like it was like a game of two halves, like they used to say in football. The dialogue at the beginning was very mediocre, and it dived into exposition, possibly a bit too much. It went on a bit too long. But despite those sort of sniffy reviews that the film's been getting, I think it was still a fun film, a popcorn movie which was sort of pure escapism for the sort of case for the outside world. This is one film that they actually do say you should go and see it in the big screen. If you can't, that is fantastic. But I saw it in what would probably regarded as a regular screen, and I watched it in a lot smaller screen. But I watched it in day of release, and I have to admit it didn't affect my enjoyment. The only thing it did affect my enjoyment was at the beginning there was about a dozen people who during the start of the film were all on their mobile phones. Please, if you one of these people. If you want to go on your mobile phone, please go outside. If not, turn it off. Just for the sake of everyone else that's watching it. Also, I think the first half, the film played a little bit of montage. Not a roundup of what happened in the previous film. I gave a little montage of the previous films. So we're seeing Ethan, a young Ethan uh, from his first film, seeing some of the iconic stunts. The sort of iconic stunt where he's sort of falling from the ceiling, that sort of white building. He's trying to get his hands in something, which has a lot of important info in it. To the last film with that extraordinary Evil Knievel bike stunt he did, that was just something else. So the next 2 hours of the film, this is where the magic actually kicks in, and there's 2 stunts in there that are absolutely fantastic. There's the underwater scene, and then there's the aeroplane scene. The water scene is basically my personal favourite in this film. But I won't go too much details into it spot for anyone who really do want to see it. The scene is virtually dialogue free. The tone and even the visual effects can easily have been like a Lovecraftian horror. The vastness, the claustrophobia, the dread, the unknown. It was like in a horror. It was like a sci-fi horror in a sense, no, like that, like Alien. We know that Ethan's in a forbidden place, but it's a place he had to go. So, like as Ripley said, no one can hear you scream in space. You could actually say the same thing about underwater. No one can hear you scream under there as well. The other scene, I won't. It's not really much a spoiler because it was one of the scenes they used to promote the marketing of Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. It's the airplane scene, and even though they were all planes, they were still fast. They were still highly dangerous scenes as well, and absolutely fantastic. And what we must remember about these stunts, especially in the stunts for the last four films, which are the films that were directed by Christopher McQuarrie, majority of them are practical stunts with very little FX involved. Yeah. So back to the sort of overall tone of this film. It harks back to the original Brian De Palma film, where you get a sense of paranoia, and regardless, everyone, if you're meant to be in the same team, are allies or enemies, or something on with a grudge, he didn't know who to trust there. But I also think the film resonates a lot with today's political climate. It's very fragile, it's on a knife's edge, and even one step is curtains for us all. And there's also obviously the unseen body creating the hatred, the fear amongst the people. They'll be asking the question, is it deep state or is it AI? The cast of River never disappoints. Some may argue some of them were underused, and I have to agree there is. Some were underused. Personally, they all sort of played their part. You get IMF team, which is Simon Pegg, Pom Klimtomoff, Van Rhymes, Greg Davis, and Haley Atwell. And they're the cogs that kept Cruise's even hunt running. And then you've got Angela Bassett. She was fantastic. Hope McCallany, Nick Offerman, Janet McTeer, Charles Parnell, and Mark Gatiss. They were all very good there as well. You can see the tension of the environment and what environment everyone was actually in. Hannah Woodingham, Katie O'Brien, possibly the two in the whole film might have been underused here, but I believe the one actor in it who outshone everyone was Trammell Tillman, who plays the captain of the submarine that Ethan Hunt goes to. He just outshines everyone in this. Will this be the swan song for the IMF, or will they choose to accept another mission once again? Good question. The door is still left open. Obviously, people asking, will it be with Tom Cruise? We don't know. No one knows at this moment. But despite all the flaws, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, I think, is the prime blockbuster. The exhilarating second half, which could have been drowned in the heavy exposition and the mediocre dialogue of the first half. But what it does is it goes back to what the fans of the franchise wanting. It's that jaw-dropping action, the political intrigue, and basically with Ethan Hunt saving the world. So for Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, I give it 4 stars. For the final review of this episode 45 of the Chronicle Film Podcast is Wes Anderson's Phoenician Scheme. Clotilde, would you like to tell us about the film, or would you like a hand grenade?
Take a hand grenade.
Thank you. Okay, so you like to tell us about the film if you liked it or not?
It's always hard with Wes Anderson to kind of summarize the plot, I think, because there's just so much happening sometimes in a good way. I think in this one in a good way. But the latest one, the Phoenician Scheme, is about a wealthy businessman basically suffering from a series of assassination attempts, and he needs to survive every single one of them. However, he is concerned about his well-being, even if he does say that he feels particularly safe throughout the film. But he does decide to kind of figure out what's happening with his estate because he's very rich, and decides to appoint his daughter, his eldest daughter, as a sole heir to his estate. She's a bit confused because he has 9 sons, and she never thought she would inherit the family business, and she had decided to become a nun. And obviously that comes all into question when he offers this opportunity, so to speak. So they kind of start on a trial basis to see if she wants to become his heir, but it's pretty clear that she will, and that she's kind of trying to learn, I suppose, the in and out of the family business. So they embark together on this new enterprise, and they're trying to, what's the word? I suppose I don't want to say trick other people, but kind of trick other people
Yeah.
or rich people into supporting their business. And it becomes, in a way, more and more dangerous as we go on, and we find assassins, and obviously the fact that he's been murdered, almost murdered multiple times, comes back, and he's also very kind of terrified that he's being spied on, and all of these elements are kind of coming back into the film. Um, I actually really liked it. I think I went into it with quite low expectations because I didn't like his Wes Anderson's last feature film, the Asteroid City. I didn't hate it. I just wasn't a big fan, let's say. So I was very cautious about this, and I didn't really hear much about it. I know it premiered at Cannes, but I sort of tried not to hear too much about it before going in, and I did really like it. I have to say, I think it's just so quintessentially Wes Anderson, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's obviously there's like a rhythm to his script, and there are so many things that make it his, like the color palette and the jokes, and I think it's so funny at times, in a very Wes Anderson way. But I also really like some of the kind of topics that it deals with, in terms of like with season on, they do talk about religion a lot, and I feel like it never sort of like tells us what to think. But for me, it did kind of prompt a lot of interesting ideas in that sense, and also about like capitalism and the accumulation of wealth because he's a really, rich businessman and corrupted. And so I thought that was very fascinating to kind of tackle in a story that is kind of absurd in itself, but I think that's what makes it fun. Like, when he said, "Do you want a hand grenade?" I find that so funny.
Yeah, it was.
And it feels very real in a way within the plot. I feel like you're not questioning why he's giving hand grenades to people. Um, but I also thought the acting was really good. I think that's another like big thing with Wes Anderson. Like he always picks such a strong cast, and it's really great to see them interact with each other. I think they're obviously really good in their respective characters, but I really like the sort of bigger scenes, right? When they keep going back and forth between two or three characters. I think that's like my favorite scenes of the film, and in general, that's for me what happens with Wes Anderson. So I really like the acting. I think they did an incredible work at making this story that is quite absurd, and these characters that could easily feel like caricatures feel very real. And you could see their backstories and their motivation. I thought that was brilliant. I was quite happy with it. I think it's always hard with Wes Anderson. I think people kind of always expect him to like do better and better because he's such a established filmmaker and has won a number of awards. And it's hard not to compare like whatever his newest film is with like his classics or his, I guess, best films like to me, Grand Budapest Hotel or Fantastic Mr. Fox. But at the same time, I do think he does have a very obviously distinctive style as I mentioned, but I think he's pretty good at making each film quite unique. I think this one for me stands out quite a lot because of the setting, um, and because of the characters. It doesn't really feel. I think with Asteroid City, I kind of felt like it was a sort of iteration of something I had already seen. But with this one, it did feel like he had something new to say in a way, at least in terms of the themes that he explores. I also really like the structure. A relatively long film is 2 hours something.
Yeah,
But it
just
feels quite snappy, quite short in that sense because it starts out quite well. We sort of follow him and his daughter like moving through countries and meeting new people. So it in a way sort of feels like we're watching different chapters. They're even like split. The narrative itself split into chapters. And I think that makes it quite easy to watch as well because you're like, oh, I'm watching this bit now, and it's quite easy to understand in that sense where it's going. Obviously that's something that he has used before, like in the French Dispatch. But I think in this one, the structure and the separation into like chapters or smaller films, if you will, is quite successful for me. So I was a big fan. I do think it does take a little bit to get started just because there's quite a lot of info, obviously, to the background. The first thing is really good and it kind of already delivers a lot and tells a lot about the style. But I think after the opening, there is a little bit that is a bit slower where you're like, okay, I know this is like a sort of info dump. It deals with it quite well. I didn't feel like it was too expositionary, but I did feel like it was a sort of like slower bit where the audience was being introduced to the characters more than anything else because it feels like they wanted us to understand like, the plot and the stakes and the characters before getting into the action. I didn't mind that too much. A small note, but yeah. What did you think?
Yep, I think it's definitely his best film since the Grand Budapest Hotel, which is
You think?
yeah. But
Yeah,
I,
because
I, I wouldn't say it's on the same level.
no,
It,
yeah,
no, it's. I think when you watch a Wes Anderson movie, and if you're a writer, a journalist, and you're reviewing movies, I think when you're being critical to
hmm
Wes Anderson, I think the Grand Budapest is the film, the standard that he should be judged on.
yeah,
It was that was just a homage to Ealing Studio films and the comedies. And Ralph Fiennes he was exceptional, very funny in it. It was
he
a
was
delight.
brilliant.
He was brilliant. It was a delightful film. We always see Ray Fiennes as some more serious or a villain, you know. When it comes to sort of more recent films, like The French Dispatch, it was one I was really, really looking forward to, but I was left very disappointed and frustrated. You know, obviously the film trying to capture the love of journalism and through a collection of stories, which I felt many were felt disjointed. It was a shame because the sort of art of writing journalism or writing reviews for their sake, or any type of journalism using the sort of traditional means of your pen or a pencil and a notepad, they're coming as extinct as a dodo. I still use them, and I think you still use them because we both mentioned on episodes that
Yeah,
we read for our notes, that type of thing. As in the Asteroid City, well, back to French Dispatch, I thought it was probably his most serious film in the sort of tone
hmm
wise, but I thought it was devoid of what made him very famous. So it's the quirkiness, the sort of element. I think that was him doing something more like sort of Robert Bresson, you know, that type of film there. Asteroid City should have been his redemption for people, for fans who were very disappointed with the French Dispatch, sort of playing on the family grief of 1950s America, small town America. I think it played it safe. As you said rightly, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't any extraordinary either. But the one thing I did like about that film that stole the film was the CGI Roadrunner. I thought that one was
yeah,
brilliant. As I said, the Phoenician Scheme is probably the closest to a great film from Wes Anderson. I mean, I'm a fan of Moonrise Kingdom and Life Aquatic. I like the two films as well. I'm very in there. This was sort of very enjoyable, very funny moments. As we said, would you like a hand grenade? That was just hilarious. You know that I actually got the cinema laughing. But the hand grenade folks they're not just like the ones you see in films and they throw them explode. They were decorated sometimes like Fabergé eggs, that type of thing. You know. And it was funny when he got to one character, the Benedict Cumberbatch character. No, thank you, I've got my own, you know. That got another laugh as well, you know, that type of thing. It felt sometimes, do you know the magazine wallpaper?
yeah,
Yeah, I think at times when we were watching this film, from the palette scheme, the colours, the fashion sense,
hmm
the interiors, it felt like sometimes I was watching the pages of Wallpaper magazine coming alive. You know, I don't mean that as a negative. You know, it's if anyone's read the magazine, you know, if you're a design student, especially maybe in fashion interiors, it's a bit of a bible to you, you know, type thing. A little bit of graphic design. That's how I sort of learned it when I was at university. I think Threapleton, who plays Liesl, she sort of stole the show a little bit, you know, with her humour, her dry wit and that, and her seriousness. Do you know who her mum is? Her mum is Kate Winslet. No.
God, I always forget that. I
Yeah.
did know, but I always
Yeah.
forget.
She appeared in. She's not the first time she appeared in film. Her first film was, I think it was Labour Day, the one with her mum. and Josh Brolin. She played obviously her daughter in that. Or was it Josh Brolin's? I can't remember because that's a while back. That film came out over 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago. She's definitely in it in there. As in fans, hardcore fans of Wes Anderson, they're definitely going to like this. They'll enjoy it. They'll probably enjoy it better than, say, someone that's maybe watching Wes Anderson for the first time, or they're a casual
Yeah.
Wes Anderson type of fan. I'll probably say I'm a bit more casual now. I used to be a bit more hardcore at the beginning. I mean, I'm sitting in front of the Grand Budapest Wes Anderson collection, coffee style book, table book there in front of me. So I'm a fan of such. I'm not going to go further into it. Is there any sort of final words you would like to give the Phoenician Scheme and maybe what rating?
It surprised me positively, which I think is quite fun when it happens. I think especially with like such a well established director, because like I said, I think the pressure is quite massive. Um, I do agree when you said it's like probably one of his best. It's his best after the Grand Budapest Hotel. I am a big fan of Isle of Dogs, but I think the last two, the French Dispatch and Asteroid City, didn't quite land as much. Um, and I do agree, it's not as good as like Grand Budapest Hotel, but that's also like a very hard level to reach. I did give it 4 stars because again, it's not his best, but it's very good, and I it's just a good time. I think with like all Wes Anderson's films, you do kind of have to be of his style and his storytelling style, which is very unique. But if you are, then I think you will enjoy it a lot more than his latest films like Asteroid City, which I don't think actually did quite well in terms of rating
No,
and critics. But yes, I'm quite happy with it. So 4 stars. What about you?
I'm more of a sort of three and a half, three and a half. I think it's one of his sort of darkest films to date.
Hmm.
As in again saying the sort of tone of the film. It's actually probably his most personal film because it was
Yeah.
inspired by a number of factors, but the real life, a lot of real life events, historical events. But it was his father-in-law. His father-in-law was a Lebanese businessman called Fuad Malouf, who sadly passed. So he's taken a lot of inspiration. Apparently, as I seen folks when Zsa Zsa's explaining to Liesl about all the scheme, there's a lot of shoe boxes laid out. And sort of laid out in the sort of typical Wes Anderson style, in the typography and
Yeah.
everything on the boxes. That was something that his father-in-law used to do. So that's what it sort of takes that sort of inspiration from him. There's a lot of obviously a lot of the characters there. You see a lot of Onassis there, and a few of the other business tycoons that were around at the time as well. A lot of wealthy tycoons there as well. And as I said, it's a lot of personal experience he had with his own father-in-law. I actually saw a lot of Peter Greenaway in this film. No, especially with the thief, the cook, and the lover, with the sort of colour palette, the sort of the sort of absurd side of things, a little bit of the quirkiness as well, which Peter Greenaway had. I mean, it's obvious that Peter Greenaway is a big influence on Wes Anderson, but overall, it had its moments. It's definitely one for the fans. Had a lot of standout performances, especially from Maya Threapleton. I have to give a shout out to Bjorn or Michael Cera.
Ah,
Uh,
yes, he's so good.
yeah, he gave some of the sort of the sort of funnier sides of it. He's like a sort of tutor in this for he's meant to be for the kids of Zsa Zsa's kids, Korda's kids. And there is a little twist in it. I won't say much more about it. However, if you are a casual fan or somebody looking into Wes Anderson for the first time, it might not capture you as much. But other than that, it is definitely his best film since The Grand Budapest. Not necessarily at that level. It did have moments of alien comedy in this as well. I gave it a three and a half. So there you have it, folks. That's the Phoenician Scheme. We give it a 3.5 and a 4-star. And that's your wrap, folks. That was episode 45 of the Chronicle. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much to Universal and Paramount for letting me see the films. Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, and The Phoenician Scheme are now out in cinemas, not just in the UK and Ireland, in around the world as well. Look at your local listings to find out when your local cinema or theatre is showing it. As ever, Clotilde, thank you very much for joining us. Would you like to tell them about where they can read your reviews and your social media?
Yes. So I obviously write for the People's Movies. I also write for Loud and Clear Reviews, Movie Marker, and Film Hounds magazine, to mention some of the websites I write for the most. And I'm on social media. I'm at The Pleasure Being Chloe on Instagram, at Films with Chloe on Letterboxd and Twitter. I am sure I'm on Blue Sky, but don't really keep up with it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, we're the same. We do have Blue Sky, but we don't update it as much. As for the Chronicle and the People's Movies, we're on Facebook and X and Twitter. That's at the People's Movie. We're also on Instagram at the People's Movies. You can also find us over at YouTube at the People's Movies 1. That is where you'll also find a lot of interviews, a lot of trailers, a lot of reviews, and also the Chronicle episodes and the Take Two episodes. Once I upload them onto Podbean, which is our main host, they do get shared out around social media and other podcast websites. You can find the Chronicle on many of the popular websites to download your favourite podcasts, such as Apple, which we're now finding on, which is fantastic. Podbean, as I mentioned, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube Music, to name a few. Sometimes we'll all continue to chat over at the Chronicle Take Two. Stay tuned on social media and the People's Movies to find out about future episodes. To do that, you can sign up for our email newsletter where you'll find the link over at the People's Movie. It will keep you posted on the updates and also what happens on the website. You can show your support for the Chronicle and the People's Movies with Buy Me a Coffee and a PayPal. You can find the links over at the website, but also you can share the podcast on social media with your friends and family. And if you're listening through one of those podcast sites that we mentioned earlier, do give us a rating, do follow us, do share it. We are a small podcast, and doing this will help more people find our podcasts. Clotilde, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much to you. Until the next time, enjoy the movies.